You see, in this world, people often confuse noise with power. They think the loudest voice wins the argument, the boldest claim secures the victory, and the one who speaks first gets ahead. But let me tell you something that life has taught me, and maybe it's time we all listened a little closer. Real power doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't need to fight for attention. Power, when it's genuine, walks into the room without saying a word and still shifts the atmosphere. Silence, my friend, is not the weakness of the voiceless. It is the strength of the wise. It is the confidence of the one who knows who they are and who they belong to. The one who has seen enough storms to know they don't need to yell back at the wind. They just wait because they know who calms the seas. Think about Jesus for a moment. When he stood before Pilate, when he was accused by men, mocked, insulted, spat upon, he didn't argue, he didn't fight back. He didn't raise his voice to prove his innocence. He was silent, not because he was powerless, but because he had already won. That silence spoke louder than any defense. That silence was strength. There are moments in your life when the best thing you can do is say nothing at all. Not because you don't have the words, not because you don't know the truth, but because the moment doesn't deserve your energy. It doesn't deserve your peace. You don't need to explain your calling to people who weren't in the room when God called you. You don't need to justify your path to those who were never meant to walk it with you. Silence is a response. It's a response of maturity. It's a sign that you've grown, that you're no longer moved by opinions or provoked by provocation. It's easy to react. It takes discipline to remain still. It's easy to argue. It takes character to walk away and let God do the talking for you. You see, when you're silent, you're not ignoring the storm. You're trusting that the storm doesn't have the final word. You're not letting people walk over you. You're letting God lift you above the noise. There's a difference because when you open your mouth at the wrong time, you can delay what God wants to do through you. But when you remain silent in faith, you give him full control, and trust me, God never loses control. I want to tell someone listening right now, you don't have to raise your voice to raise your value. You don't have to argue to be understood. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stay quiet and let God be your defender. Let your actions speak. Let your growth speak. Let your fruit speak. In fact, some of you are tired not because you're walking the wrong path, but because you're carrying too many conversations that were never yours to have. You're drained because you keep responding to things that are beneath your purpose. Not everything deserves your answer. Not every insult needs a reply. Sometimes silence is the only way to keep your spirit clean while the world throws dirt on your name. And let me tell you this, God hears what they say about you behind closed doors. He sees who's smiling in your face and speaking against you when you're not around. And if you stay silent, if you refuse to stoop down to their level, God will handle it. Oh yes, He will. He will make a table for you, not just in any place, but right there in the presence of your enemies. And you won't have to say a word. Your silence will be your vindication. There's a kind of peace that comes when you finally realize you don't owe anyone an explanation for the blessings God has placed over your life. People may question how you got there. They may wonder why God is opening doors for you, but they weren't there for the nights you cried. They didn't see the sacrifices you made. They didn't see the battles you fought in silence. So why waste your breath trying to convince them? Let them wonder, let them talk. While they gossip, you grow. While they slander, you soar. While they're watching, keep walking. If you can master the discipline of silence, you will walk into rooms that your enemies said you'd never enter. You will receive blessings that the world said you didn't deserve, and when that happens, don't clap back. Don't throw shade. Don't say, "I told you so." Just smile. Just keep walking, because that's what the silent do. They don't announce victory, they live it. So today, make up your mind, stay silent, not because you're weak, but because you're wise, not because you're scared, but because you trust the one who fights your battles. Not because you don't know what to say, but because you know who speaks for you. Be silent and watch what God does next. Sometimes in life, it's not about what you say, it's about what you surrender. There are moments when God will call you into silence, not to punish you, but to prepare you. He'll ask you to step back, quiet your thoughts, and just trust Him. Because, believe it or not, God often works the most when we speak the least. We live in a world that's loud, everyone's talking, everyone's posting, everyone wants to be seen, to be heard, to be validated, but heaven doesn't respond to noise, it responds to faith, and real faith doesn't always speak. Sometimes real faith just listens. Real faith gets down on its knees in silence and whispers, God, I trust you even when I don't understand. There are blessings that are delayed, not because you're not ready, but because your spirit is too distracted to hear the instructions. You can't follow divine direction if you're filling the room with your own opinions, and I'm here to tell you some of the greatest breakthroughs you're praying for waiting behind a quiet heart. Not a quiet life, no life will always have movement, but a quiet heart. One that trusts, one that listens, one that doesn't need to rush God because it knows His timing is perfect. When was the last time you sat in silence, not scrolling, not talking, not planning, but just being in the presence of God? Some of the most powerful moments I've ever had in my walk with the Lord weren't during the shouting or the singing. They came in the stillness, that sacred hush where the world fades and your soul leans in. That's where God whispers the next step. That's where He corrects what your pride couldn't hear when you were too busy arguing. That's where He begins to heal what noise tried to hide. You see, when you're silent, you're not stepping away from the battle. You're stepping into God's presence. You're saying, Lord, I don't need to fight this my way. I'm done trying to fix what I can't control. I surrender it to you. And when you reach that place, God begins to move in ways you could never imagine. He opens doors you didn't even knock on. He clears paths you didn't see coming. He brings peace in situations where you thought you'd drown in anxiety. But it starts with silence. It starts with trust. Some of you have been talking too much to people and not enough to God. You've been explaining yourself, defending yourself, complaining, venting, trying to get others to understand what you're going through. But people can't fix what only God can heal. People can't carry what only God can lift. And the longer you keep running to noise, the longer you'll delay the answer that only comes in silence. There's a reason Jesus often withdrew from the crowds. He wasn't tired of healing. He wasn't avoiding people. He understood something we often forget. Silence with the Father refuels the soul. It resets the mind. It realigns the mission. You can't pour out if you're always surrounded by noise. Even the Savior had to be still to be strong, and I want to talk to the one who feels unheard right now. The one who's been praying, crying, asking, waiting, and still heaven seems quiet. You've been wondering, why isn't God answering me? But maybe the silence isn't absence, it's alignment. Maybe God isn't ignoring you. He's inviting you to stop talking long enough to listen. And if you'll lean in, you'll realize He's been speaking all along through closed doors, through delayed blessings, through things falling apart so something better can fall into place. It takes maturity to understand that God's silence doesn't mean He stopped working. Sometimes the greatest miracles are formed in the dark. The seed in the soil makes no sound, yet it grows. The baby in the womb doesn't speak, yet it's being formed. The caterpillar in the cocoon is silent, but transformation is underway. So why do we think we must always make noise to see change? God is not limited by our volume. He is moved by our surrender. You don't have to remind God of the promises He made to you. He hasn't forgotten, but he may be waiting for your stillness before he releases them. He may be waiting for your silence before he reveals the next door. Because when you're still, your eyes open, your ears sharpen, your faith deepens. And when that happens, you don't just receive the blessing, you're ready to carry it. So stop trying to out-talk your fears. Stop trying to outshout your enemies. You don't have to post it. You don't have to prove it. You don't have to explain it. Just be still. God is not deaf. He's not late. He's just waiting for you to be quiet enough to hear this is the way. Walk in it. And you don't realize how valuable your peace is until you start losing it. Until you find yourself exhausted, not from working hard, but from carrying conversations that go nowhere. Defending yourself against people who have already made up their minds and reacting to every comment, every look, every word thrown your way. That's when it hits you. Your peace is more precious than your point. And silence becomes your shield. There are things in this life that simply aren't worth your voice. Not because you don't care, not because you're weak, but because you finally learned that maturity doesn't react, it responds. And more often than not, it responds with silence. You see, every time you respond to something that doesn't serve your purpose, you pay with your energy. You pay with your focus. You pay with your time. And some of us are spiritually bankrupt today because we've been paying attention to things that never deserved our attention in the first place. We've allowed the world to drag us into battles we were never called to fight. We've turned our peace into a platform for arguments, our hearts into targets for other people's projections. But hear me when I say this, you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. Not every accusation demands a rebuttal. Not every situation needs your voice. Some things need your silence because silence is a boundary and boundaries protect what's sacred. And what's sacred, friend, is your purpose. What's sacred is your calling. What's sacred is your relationship with God. And when you respond to every little offense, every whisper of gossip, every post made to provoke you, you are handing over the peace God gave you to people who didn't earn it and can't protect it. That's not wisdom, that's self-sabotage. There comes a point in your walk with God where you don't react because of who they are. You stay silent because of who He is, because you know that the battle isn't yours. The burden isn't yours. The outcome isn't yours to control. All you have to do is stand still, hold your peace, and let the Lord fight for you. There is a beautiful verse that says, "In quietness and trust shall be your strength." That's not just poetic, it's practical. When you stop chasing noise, stop explaining yourself, stop reacting to every push and pull from the outside world, you find something deep inside. Strength, clarity, peace that doesn't come from your surroundings. It comes from your surrender, and I know it's not easy. It's not easy to stay silent when you're misunderstood. It's not easy to hold your tongue when someone is lying on your name. It's not easy to walk away when you know you could prove your point. But listen, God isn't calling you to win arguments. He's calling you to win the war within. He's not asking you to be right in their eyes. He's asking you to be righteous in His. That means you don't need to explain why you walked away from certain people. You don't need to justify why you're not answering every message. You don't owe anyone an explanation for protecting your peace. Sometimes the best thing you can do is smile, say nothing, and keep walking. Because your silence is your growth, your silence is your healing, your silence is your strength. Let them talk. Let them assume, let them misunderstand, because the truth is they talked about Jesus too. And still He fulfilled His purpose, still He rose, still He changed the world, not with arguments but with obedience, not with noise but with presence. And if He can stay silent in front of His accusers, knowing who He was, so can you. You don't have to defend yourself when heaven is already defending you. You don't have to react when your reaction could cost you your peace. Just because they're loud doesn't mean they're right. And just because you're quiet doesn't mean you're weak. Sometimes silence is the loudest declaration that your spirit belongs to God, not to people's opinions. You want to grow. You want to walk in peace. Then protect your energy, guard your mind, and be very selective about what deserves your voice, because your voice is powerful. And what's powerful must also be protected. Be silent and let peace become your greatest weapon. There's a reason God tells us to be still, not just to stop moving, but to quiet the noise in our hearts and minds. Because silence isn't just the absence of sound, it's the presence of trust. It's saying, Lord, I don't know what you're doing right now, but I believe you're doing something good. And that kind of silence, that's where strength is born. Sometimes we're so busy talking, worrying, complaining, trying to figure things out that we forget God already has the answer. We think our words will fix it. We think if we say more, plan more, stress more, then maybe something will change. But faith doesn't grow through noise. It grows through stillness. It grows when you decide to stop asking why and start saying, I trust you anyway. You see, real trust shows itself when you can't see the way. When everything is dark, uncertain, when the prayers seem unanswered and the path looks unclear, that's where faith steps in. That's where silence becomes power. Not the silence of despair, but the silence of confidence. The kind of silence that says, even if I don't understand it, now I know who holds tomorrow. God doesn't always explain himself. He doesn't always send the details, but he does promise his presence. And sometimes he's waiting for you to stop talking long enough to feel it. You can't hear the whisper of the Holy Spirit when your mind is filled with fear and your mouth is filled with complaints. But if you can calm the storm inside, you'll begin to realize he's been there the whole time. Some of you are walking through a season right now that doesn't make sense. You're trying to trust, but nothing is moving. Nothing is opening. Nothing is changing, and you're tempted to panic. You're tempted to go back, to compromise, to say something, to do something, anything to make something happen. But sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing. Just stand still, just trust. Just be silent and let God be God. Think about the children of Israel standing at the edge of the Red Sea, the enemy behind them, the water in front of them, no way forward, no way back. And what did God say? Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. He didn't tell them to build a boat. He didn't tell them to run. He told them to stand, to be still, to trust. And the moment they obeyed, the sea split wide open. That's the kind of God we serve, the kind who makes a way where there is no way. But he doesn't always move when we speak. Sometimes he moves when we stop speaking, when we stop panicking, when we stop trying to be in control, when we finally say, God, I surrender this completely to you. You can't hold a pen and ask God to write your story at the same time. At some point, you've got to lay it down. You've got to say, God, even if I don't see it, I'll trust you. Even if I don't hear you, I know you're near. Even if I don't feel anything changing, I believe you're working behind the scenes. That kind of trust, quiet, deep, unwavering, is what moves heaven. It's easy to say we trust God when everything is going well. It's easy to have faith when the blessings are flowing and the doors are opening. But what about when the door stays shut? What about when the answer is delayed? What about when you're met with silence? That's when true trust is tested. And that's when silence becomes your strength. Because trust doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just waits quietly, humbly, without needing to know the timeline, without demanding an explanation. It just waits because it knows that God is too faithful to fail, too good to forget, and too wise to make mistake. Don't let the silence scare you. Don't let the delay make you doubt. God hasn't left you. He hasn't forgotten you. He's just building something in you. He's teaching you to walk by faith and not by sight. He's teaching you that you don't need answers, you just need Him, and one day, when the silence breaks and the blessing comes, you'll realize it was worth the wait. You'll look back and thank God that He didn't let you rush, that He didn't answer too soon, that He held you in that quiet place until your heart was ready to receive what your words couldn't have handled. So trust Him in the silence, trust Him when it doesn't make sense, trust Him when everything in you wants to panic, because sometimes the loudest faith is the quietest heart. Be silent and let your trust speak louder than your words. There comes a time in your life when God starts shifting the people around you, and if you're not careful, you'll think it's punishment when it's really preparation. You'll think you're being rejected when you're actually being protected. And in moments like that, silence becomes more than a posture. It becomes your survival. You see, not everyone who starts with you is meant to finish with you. Not everyone who applauds you in one season will walk with you into the next. And sometimes the most painful part of growth is outgrowing the people you thought you'd never have to live without. But hear me, you don't have to announce it. You don't have to explain it. You don't even have to defend it. Be silent and let God do the separating. Some relationships are seasonal. Some friendships were only meant to last for a chapter, not the whole book. And when God starts turning the page, it's not your job to cling to characters who don't belong in your next scene. You don't need closure when you have peace. You don't need revenge when you've been released. You don't need to chase people who walked away when God is calling you forward. But the flesh wants answers, doesn't it? We want to know why they changed, why they left, why they lied, why they treated us that way, and we want to speak up. We want to expose the betrayal, confront the dishonor, explain ourselves, defend our name. But friend, silence is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's trusting that what God reveals in time is far more powerful than anything you could say right now. You don't need to broadcast the pain they caused. You don't need to drag their name through the mud. God saw it all. He heard the conversations behind your back. He watched the doors they tried to close. He witnessed the manipulation, the gossip, the sabotage, but he also said, "Vengeance is mine. Not yours, not your mouth, not your emotions, His." And when you hand the battle over to Him, silence becomes your weapon. There's a silence that speaks louder than words, a silence that confides.